What the hell are you doing here? Richard Sterling's sharp voice cut through the silence of the empty penthouse at 3 in the morning, his words echoing against marble walls and glass panels. The sound made the young woman sitting on the polished floor look up, her dark eyes calm and steady. Books were spread out around her like an island of determination, a small flashlight casting its pale glow over pages filled with mathematical equations that looked out of place in a space built for luxury. Kesha Williams didn't flinch. She didn't scramble to her feet or stammer an apology. She simply adjusted her posture slightly, her fingers lingering on the worn spine of a textbook that had seen better days. The faint hum of the city outside drifted in through the windows, a distant reminder that the world beyond this $26 million fortress didn't sleep. Mr. Sterling, her voice was steady, almost formal, but not submissive. I'm done cleaning. I was just taking a moment to study before heading home. Richard descended the stairs slowly, each heavy step punctuated by irritation. The silk of his pajamas shimmered faintly in the low light, contrasting sharply with the simple, functional uniform Kesha wore. At 42, Richard Sterling had built his empire by being ruthless, by knowing his worth and demanding others know theirs. People like him thrive because they understood one thing above all: power had to be asserted. And this, a cleaning lady using his penthouse as if it were a public library, was a challenge he couldn't ignore. "Study," he said, letting out a short laugh that held no humor. "Do you have any idea where you are? This isn't some coffee shop or community center. This is my home, and I pay you to clean, not to play student on my marble floor." Kesha's gaze didn't waver. She closed her book slowly, sliding the $5 calculator back into her bag with the same care one might give to something precious. Her movements were unhurried, deliberate, as though time bent to her will and not the other way around. When she finally stood, she faced him fully, and there was something in her expression that unsettled him more than he wanted to admit. "With all due respect, sir, the house is spotless, just as I always leave it." Her calm tone ignited a spark of anger in him. For 6 months, Kesha had been nothing more than a shadow in his world. Someone who entered, performed her duties, and vanished without leaving so much as a footprint. But now, standing there with those books, with that air of quiet confidence, she seemed like something else entirely. "Listen carefully," he said, leaning in, his height a weapon he used instinctively. "People like you have a place in society. Don't pretend to be something you're not." It's pathetic. For the briefest moment, something flickered in her eyes. Not rage, not fear, but something far more dangerous. It was the look of someone holding a secret too heavy for words, the look of someone who understood exactly how fragile the tower he stood on really was. "People like me," she said slowly, her voice low and deliberate. "Interesting perspective, Mr. Sterling." He didn't respond. Maybe because her tone left him with an unfamiliar chill at the base of his neck. Or maybe because deep down, something told him this wasn't over. "You're fired," he said finally, each word sharp and final. "Pick up your things and leave. And don't even think about asking for references." Kesha gathered her books, her dignity as intact as the day she first stepped into his pristine world. At the door, she paused and turned her head just enough for her voice to carry back to him, calm and chilling. "Have you ever heard the saying about never underestimating those who are always watching?" Then she was gone, her footsteps soft against the marble, leaving behind an unease Richard couldn't shake. The next morning, Richard woke up to the same view of the skyline that had always reminded him of his success. Yet the memory of the night before clung to him like smoke. It wasn't the defiance that bothered him most. It was her composure, the way she had spoken as if she knew something he didn't. "Ridiculous," he muttered as he adjusted his $1,000 tie. "A cleaning lady trying to intimidate me." But when his assistant walked into his office later that morning, her expression uneasy, irritation curled back in his chest. "Sir, the cleaning company called. They want to know why Kesha Williams was dismissed. Apparently, she was their top-rated employee." Richard laughed without mirth. "She didn't know her place. I caught her studying in my home like it was a library. Unacceptable." Janet hesitated. What was she studying? "I don't care if it was a gossip magazine or a car manual," Richard snapped, slamming a palm against his desk. "Domestic help doesn't study in their employer's house." End of discussion. What Richard couldn't know was that while he ranted in his luxurious office, Kesha sat in a modest public library, a worn laptop in front of her and a small stack of notes by her side. She wasn't crying. She wasn't lamenting her dismissal. She was planning. Because those 6 months in his penthouse hadn't been about cleaning. They had been about observing, about documenting, about collecting every scrap of information he had carelessly left in plain sight, convinced that a woman like her couldn't possibly comprehend the complexity of his empire. Contracts revealing insider deals, bribery agreements disguised as consultancy fees, text messages coordinating bids for public projects. Kesha had photographed everything with an old phone no one would have looked twice at. Her degree in economics had given her the knowledge to decode the tangled web of corruption he thought was invisible. The job as a cleaner had never been chance. It had been strategy. When every door to her career had slammed shut with polite rejections about company culture, she had decided to find another way in. If she couldn't walk through the front door, she would enter through the service entrance. Studying calculus in the penthouse hadn't been recklessness. It had been bait. She knew his schedule. She knew he would walk in early from his club dinner. She knew arrogance would do the rest. Now, in the quiet of the library, Kesha assembled a dossier that would shake the foundations of his empire. Every name, every transaction, every bribe. And as she typed, her phone buzzed with a message from her younger sister. "Kush, did you find another job? Mom's worried. Bills are piling up." "Tell her not to worry," Kesha replied. "Soon everything will change." And change it did. Richard Sterling went about his life oblivious, bragging at his golf club about putting an insolent maid in her place. His laughter carried over the polished wood and clinking glasses. He had no idea that someone at the next table was listening. Marcus Thompson, a young journalist and part-time waiter, heard every word. He recognized the name, the arrogance, the pattern. He had been chasing leads on Sterling for 2 years, but he never had solid evidence. Until now. The next day, Marcus walked into the library and found Kesha hunched over her laptop. He approached cautiously, lowering his voice. "My name is Marcus Thompson. I'm a journalist. I think we might be able to help each other." Hours later, the two sat over stacks of documents, the reality of what they held sinking in. Fraud, bribery, manipulation. Enough to take down Richard Sterling and half the city's elite. Over the next few weeks, while Richard reveled in his victories, Kesha and Marcus built a case so airtight even Sterling's army of lawyers wouldn't puncture it. Then, fate handed them the final piece. A security camera recording of Richard himself offering a bribe inside the very penthouse where he had mocked her dreams. When Marcus slid the laptop toward her and hit play, Kesha stared at the screen, a slow, quiet smile curving her lips. "We publish Monday," Marcus said. "Front page. Every outlet. No way to spin it." Monday dawned bright and merciless. Richard woke to his phone vibrating nonstop. His assistant, his lawyer, reporters. Words like investigation, indictment, federal audit flew at him faster than he could process. He staggered into his living room, snatched up the newspaper waiting on the doormat, and froze. His own face glared back at him from the front page, next to a headline that ripped the ground out from under him. "Millionaire empire built on fraud and bribes." Exclusive documents expose corruption. He flipped through the pages in disbelief, each word a dagger. Contracts he thought were hidden. Messages he thought deleted. Recordings he thought untraceable. And then the final blow, a photo of him mid-bribe, time-stamped and undeniable. Evidence provided by an anonymous source with privileged access. The room spun. Anonymous source. Months of access. His phone rang again. "The IRS is freezing your accounts," his lawyer barked. "You need to surrender now." Calls from investors followed, cutting ties, demanding refunds. Politicians scrambled to distance themselves. Within hours, his empire crumbled like a house of cards in a storm. Then came the knock at the door. Richard moved like a man underwater, opening it to find a familiar face framed by the penthouse doorway. Kesha Williams stood there, not in a uniform this time, but in a tailored blazer, confidence radiating from her like sunlight. "I came to return something," she said calmly, setting the newspaper on his desk. Her picture stared up at him from the page beneath the headline that spelled his doom. "You planned this," he whispered, his voice raw. "No, Mr. Sterling. I prepared for the opportunity. And you gave it to me when you underestimated me." His knees gave way as the truth crashed over him. 6 months of arrogance had armed her with the keys to his downfall. "There's one more thing," she added, her tone like steel wrapped in velvet. "My family doesn't have to worry anymore." The reward for helping the investigation was generous. Enough for my mother to retire. Enough for my sisters to finish school. Enough for me to work in the career I studied for. Her gaze held his for a long moment, calm and unyielding. "You once told me people like me had a place. You were right. And mine is anywhere I choose to stand." Then she turned and walked out, leaving him alone with the ruins of his empire. 6 months later, Richard Sterling sat in a federal prison cell, the orange jumpsuit on his back a bitter reminder of everything he had lost. His name, once a symbol of power, now whispered in shame. And Kesha Williams, the woman he called a maid, stood by a floor-to-ceiling window in her new office 3 stories above the one he had once ruled. Her title read Senior Financial Analyst. Her family thrived. Her story inspired thousands. When asked during a university lecture how she stayed patient through those months of quiet observation, she smiled. Because anger without strategy is just noise. But anger with strategy becomes justice. Far away, in a prison yard, Richard Sterling heard those words on a TV broadcast and finally understood the cost of his arrogance. He tried to break her. Instead, he forged her victory. Thank you for staying with us until the end of this powerful story. Life has a way of teaching us that money can buy comfort, but it can never buy kindness, loyalty, or the truth. What do you think about what happened today? Do you believe justice was truly served? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We love hearing your opinions. If this story touched your heart or made you think twice about how we treat others, give this video a thumbs up and subscribe for more real-life inspired stories that will keep you hooked. Until next time, stay kind and never underestimate the strength of the human spirit.